because there is the... Oh, hi.
So Marc, it's so great that we're here and have the chance to chat with each other. We're here the night before the AccsoCon, where you're going to hold a speech tomorrow, and I'm really excited. I'm really looking forward to it. The two of us met about a year ago in an Agile Lab training where I learned a lot from you about Agile coaching. But yeah, thank you. Could you give us a little info on what you're doing, where you're standing right now?
Yeah, thank you, Marc. And it's really exciting also to be here. As you remember, just a year ago, we were in the Agile Coach Camp.
Yeah.
In the Agile Boot Camp, in the Agile Boot Camp, part of the Agile Lab training, and I've been doing quite a lot of that since then. So I've been focusing mostly on how can we create those internal competencies in organizations to be able to have the right type of leadership, the right type of coaches, especially in the Agile field, and also change agent to be able to allow organization to utilize the methods for agility, to be able to change themselves. We are also here before the conference, and the topic we're going to talk about what can we learn about Agile from the extreme. And part of that is because there is so much change that is happening in our world because of many reasons that are not within our control, and that requires more and more organizations to be able to behave differently and to be able to respond much quicker to change than before. And especially the type of trainings that we did a year ago with the Agile coaching competencies are also relevant today. How can we equip people to be able to navigate through all of those changes and create the right foundation that will enable that type of a change?
So just to give a little hint or idea on the talk for you tomorrow. So the idea is that we can learn something from the way we handle extreme crisis.
Yes.
And transfer that knowledge and experience to other areas of life, such as organizations and work. Could you give us like the 3 most interesting things you can learn from that and transfer in that way?
Yeah, and it's quite interesting how much we learn from crisis for change and to be able to navigate that in the organization. And the 3 core things that we learned from handling the crisis in the Israeli-Hamas war is that the most important thing is first to create a foundation of information, making sure that everyone is on the same page and knows what information is important and centralized and what information needs to be distributed. Then the second is about decision making. Given that in a centralized way we are always slower, how can we create the right level of delegation on the areas that require local decision making? What's relevant here is not necessarily what's relevant there. And the last one, and probably the most important one that we are not putting enough attention to, is how can we create the right level of support system in the organization given the context of the organization or given the situation, whether we mean more mental type of support or we mean more support when it comes to creating a safe space for people to be able to talk about the things that matter, and investing in building that level of psychological safety and equipping the people in the organization to be able to do that is the foundation for any type of learning environment, especially agility, and not just the crisis of a war.
So sometimes people, it's not easy for people to transfer experience or knowledge from one area to the other. We talked about that this evening as well. So what do you think, how can we help people in organizations to make that knowledge transfer and experience transfer easier and feel more safe? Because I think that's an aspect that's important as well. And you mentioned psychological safety as well.
Yeah, the one big element in my work that I'm doing with psychological safety is about explaining to people what is in our control and what is not. So it's not in my control what people are coming with to the workplace. Many of us had different experiences in our life, coming from different cultures, different backgrounds, different experiences. We had different bosses in our life. We had different colleagues in our life, different learning experiences. And we come to the workplace with a lot of assumptions and biases and expectations. And when we are talking about transferring on knowledge, what I transfer might be different than what you transfer, because we just see the world in a very different place. And this is not in my control. I cannot control what you bring with you. What I can control is how do I influence it intentionally into the productive way that I want it to be in that specific organization. So if I want to create a space where people are confident to speak up, are confident to share ideas, are confident to experiment, are confident to try new things, make mistakes, sit together and talk about topics that are as difficult as a war situation or trying a new technology like artificial intelligence. Many of us are extremely terrified of it. And we want to be able to talk about it and create the environment where people feel brave to do so. Then we're talking about psychological safety. And in order to build brave environment or psychologically safe environment, we need to do three main things. And the one is being very intentional, because it's not going to create itself. And the second thing is we need to work on ourselves on how do we feel safe in a certain environment. I'm not going to fool anyone, right? If I tell everyone, this is a safe place, you need to feel safe here. They're not going to feel safe if I'm not feeling safe, if I'm not speaking up, if I'm just using it as buzzword. So how do I model the behaviors that I want to see? As a leader, I need to know what it looks like. Or as a coach, I need to know what it looks like. If every retrospective, we're only talking about that we don't have enough time to finish everything, but we're not really doing any change, we're not taking any action items, how would I believe you as my coach that this is a safe space and that there is productive progress out of that? And then the last thing is exactly that corrective experiences. So after I am able to model that, I also need to be able to create other people that corrective experiences. So they come to a retrospective, they come to a daily stand-up, they come to a review meeting, a planning meeting, any type of situation that I tell them this is a space for you to be safe right now. And when I tell them, okay, if this is a space that you're supposed to feel brave, this is a space that you're supposed to feel safe, let's experiment with something. Let's bring a new idea. Let me show you how I'm bringing a new idea and you're criticizing me and I am acknowledging you for that. I'm saying this was great that you said what you think. I'm creating those corrective experiences so they see that I'm daring, they're daring, and they're being acknowledged for that. They're being celebrated for that. And we don't know how long it's going to take, right? It can take years, it can take weeks. And once we have that type of an environment, then we can within the progress, because we're going to do it every day, we're going to do something small every day, we want to teach people how to transfer information from one area to another, because we're using that as modeling what learning looks like. So I will be sitting in a retrospective, for example, and say, you know what, let's not do a normal retrospective right now, because when we're looking into our previous sprints or iterations, depends on what framework you're using, right? I see that we took a lot of action items, but no one was working on them. So let's talk about what stops us from doing those action items. And let's get very clear on one action item that we really want to do, and let's understand what really needs to happen to get there, and asking people to bring their challenges and their objections. Okay, you believe that we cannot do that because we don't have that experience. Great. In what area in our life we have similar experience that we can utilize? And challenging people with those type of open questions and creating an environment that feels like a bit like a school, right? Like we are learning together. So as a facilitator, as a coach, as a leader, you get to be in that role, and you get to participate, but you also get to really lead those type of conversations. So that becomes the most important skills for us to have, to be able to facilitate this type of a knowledge transfer and this type of conversations.
So one thing you're suggesting is drawing parallels to areas you're already skilled, and got experience with in that area and are skilled. And the other thing, you used the metaphor for school already, that has psychologically safe fundament to build on, has rules and commitment. But there's one area that I wanted to ask you how you stand to it, that belongs in that picture as well. How do you feel about the playful character, that the letting go thing? I mean, the rule set and all that is kind of giving you stricter guidelines, but the other part, how children learn
Is
and
play.
experience, is playing, and letting loose and all that.
I am a big favor of that, and I've been also joining different events like Play for Agile and the Agile Coach Camps that are designed as an unconference for coaches to be able to engage in experiencing those type of new type of formats. At the same time, my philosophy is that we need to meet people where they are. And when I come to an organization and people are not there yet, they're not yet in that mindset that they're ready to play in the workplace, then I will only take it as far as they allow me to, so they still feel safe doing so. If I come with a game, they might, if they show some resistance, then I might start with something that feels more familiar. So the thing with change is that we are way more likely to accept something that feels familiar to us, because if something feels unfamiliar, it's very scary. We don't want to do it. It kind of triggers us like, no. It feels
For
like
most
a big...
people, at least. There are people who like that, who really are into it, and adventurous. And
Yeah, there are, and they're not the majority.
That's right.
And the majority of people feel uncomfortable with change. And sure, you want to have the pioneers. You want to have the people that are entrepreneurial and innovative. And we usually find less of them in the corporate environment because of what corporate is, and that's okay. We need all type of people in all type of environments.
Definitely.
So when I come to an organization and people are resisting change because they're afraid of something that is new, the last thing that I want to do is to also challenge them too much with things that feel uncomfortable to them. Many Europeans, my experiences showed, are not as comfortable being silly at work. And that's okay. And then what I do is I go as far as I'm allowed. So I will use improvisation theater because that gets people a bit out of their mind, but it still feels more appropriate for work. I will use different card games like in planning poker to start creating the gamification and make it a bit more familiar. But I will not go right away into play if I haven't created an environment where people are a bit more comfortable feeling silly. So I will go really step by step, meet people where they are, and challenge them with concepts that they feel comfortable to be challenged. And many people, when they think about university, when they think about school, it automatically goes into that place. Oh, I felt quite safe in school to ask a question. There were no stupid questions.
Yeah, of course.
It's a learning environment, right?
You've been judged in school, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that felt more appropriate. Also, you feel like I cannot really, like, unless it's like, okay, we have an exam. There are no exams, right? So I cannot really fail. And that's something that people feel a bit more comfortable. And once they're comfortable with that, I can start introducing slowly the more gaming elements. But in trainings that we are doing, we use a lot of games because people are more comfortable in games in trainings. So it's just a matter of how to use the right tool in the right space, because if every problem looks like a nail, then you always need to use a hammer, right? So we want to use different type of tools based on the situation that is in front of us. And this is also what we teach in trainings, or what I teach in trainings that I'm doing with leaders and with coaches of, okay, those are the tools that we have. Those are the situations that we are facing. Let's think together what will be the most appropriate appropriate tool to use, the most appropriate intervention to use in that specific context. So we are able to address all the different type of situations, and based on the team, based on the maturity, based on the organization, we are able to act, and very practically able to act, because theory is great, but it doesn't help us.
That's right. It helps us to understand, but not to change.
Not to change.
Yeah, that's right. So do you have a technique that you really like, or that's your favorite method, the first thing to use to make people more familiar with being playful? The background of my question is I experimented a lot with questions.
Yeah.
That kind of forces people to open up their minds. So, and there's not that, questions don't seem unfamiliar. People got no problem with answering questions, right? Compared to playing Lego, doing Lego serious play or something like that. So do you have a technique that you really favor?
I mean, usually when I'm teaching questions, we're using it to teach the concept of powerful questions, and that's a coaching method, but also generally it's good for communication, to be able to ask questions that are open, that are short and clear, and are inviting the other person to give you information. So that's on its own, even though it's not playful, learning how to ask questions already create a lot of intimacy between people.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. Then moving from there, I actually learned very recently from another coach a technique that I started using, and I don't know how I didn't use it before. And that was coming from improvisation theater, and it's a game such as this is a great idea, and basically asking people to. Every person speak in his turn. You start with a really horrible idea that you have in mind, like, for example, let's do the next conference from an airplane when everyone is jumping from the airplane. And then you need to say, oh my God, Bar, this is a great idea. And you need to add the worst idea that you think on top of that.
Laughter is a great technique too, because it de-escalates, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she told me that, and in the beginning I was thinking like, okay, that's an interesting idea, and I tried it out, and I think it's amazing. Lauren, she's the coach that told me about that. Amazing. She's from Raise the Bar, which is another American company I'm working with. And it was so funny. People got so comfortable with each other. And it was so quick. And then after we did a round of everyone sharing their worst ideas, which enabled them to get away a bit from, oh, I'm so afraid to speak about this topic, because you just share all of the ideas and you feel that you're not being judged. After that, we said, okay, you need to say one thing that you're buying into. So this is a great idea. What is it that you actually liked about the idea, and add to it. So in a way, you're shifting from only talking about really horrible things to things that you're actually going to do, that you're buying into. So maybe we're all going to jump from an airplane, but at least we're going to have the parachute, and we're going to take really wonderful videos of Frankfurt. And with those videos, we can then use that for branding to show how cool our team's events are. Right? So like, and by that you start people start focusing, and they actually get to things that are actually quite tangible. I was quite impressed that at the end, even though we started with a completely off idea, people found something that was actually implementable at the end of it, and I tried that with people that were naturally very introverted. So I was very impressed of how it got them off the shelf. So I think improvisation techniques that are using questions are very good games to play. And if people are not interested in improv and think that speaking up is a difficult thing to do, sometimes I also just try to to gamify a bit the ways that we are doing like prioritization, or the way that we are doing different ceremonies in the Agile. And there are many techniques that we're also teaching in the different trainings. Like, for example, I give people money. Like, you now have 100 euro and you need to invest it. And now go and negotiate with everyone on where you want to put the money. And I want to see who is going to win and going to convince as many as possible stakeholders to vote for their idea. And it really works because people get very competitive. And in spaces that are a bit more loose, there are different games, like there is the ball game, which is a classic, but it is an amazing game to see what's the natural tendencies of communication, because the way that they organize themselves around the ball game is usually a great mirror to how they communicate with each other, and that can create another 2 hours debrief on how people communicate, and that bring them very close together. So those are kind of my 3 main go-to, but there are many, many more.
Yeah, the one technique really reminds me of a technique that I use a lot in creative problem-solving workshops, and I call it distorted reality.
Ooh.
And use it usually if the problem to be solved is like something that's so that has very obvious possible solutions. So it's very hard to come up with an original one. So, and the first thing is the group has the task of doing the worst possible solution. Ooh. Really the worst possible. And so what do people do? They're shy at first, and then they start imagining really horrible stuff. They start laughing, they start throwing stuff around, and they're open, right? They're warm, they're kind of. Next phase is they're doing the best possible solution without any constraints. Oh, time travel? Okay. You want to fly to the moon? Fine. If that helps solving the problem, awesome. So it kind of works like a yoga stretch. You kind of bend into every extreme direction. And after that, in the third phase, you think, okay, what is now the realistic solution? You kind of have the extreme bad solution. You have the ultimate solution. What can you learn from that to do a feasible, very good solution? So that it reminded me of that.
Yeah, what I love about your approach is it's very similar. It's but it's focusing on solving one specific problem.
Yes.
And what's good about it is that many people believe that the first idea that they have as a solution needs to be the greatest idea ever.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we should not even mention it. And they will not feel comfortable to talk about any other idea that is not perfect. So, and especially with introverts, they think first, and then they speak. So they speak way less.
Yes.
And then when you're seeing like a team dynamic, you see that the extroverts, they dominate the entire space, while the introverts are trying to think. And they do need that space to be able to think. So we need to acknowledge that people need different communication style.
Definitely.
And when you are saying, okay, guys, you think now as a team on the worst ideas, and everyone needs to speak up and share their ideas, and maybe you first write it down on a post-it, and then you share it, and you try to bring it together. You're creating an opportunity for everyone to speak.
Yes.
You're creating a laughter. You're taking away that blockage of we should not speak about bad ideas, because that's the purpose. Speak first about your bad ideas, and many people will be actually surprised of how much of their bad ideas is useful, that they can actually take something out of it, and then by taking that out of the table and taking the things that we can actually use, it inspires them to think about things that are valuable. And there is a common mistakes in innovation that we just put people in a room and they will come up with ideas and solutions. It usually doesn't work when you don't give them the right framing. So doing that is also allowing you to see where is it that they might still have questions, and you need to create a better frame. So we're not just sitting in a room and waiting waiting for things to come to us. We are actually intentionally ideating on something. So I like it. Great.
Awesome. But to wrap it up, as we both love questions,
Yes.
I came across a very good question. I think it's a very good question. It's a very interesting one, and I'm thinking about it a lot. May I ask you this question?
Of course.
What's the opposite of you?
That's a very good question. I might need to reflect on that. I think I tend to be a talker, quite a big of a talker. So I actually had to learn to turn off all the voices in me, in my head and outward, to be able to listen to people better and allow space for others. And that probably the opposite of me will not like to talk and will be listening a lot better than me. So we should get together and learn from each other. That will be great, because that's one of my biggest things to work on. Speak less, listen more. And I think I'm also very, very practical. Like I'm not, like, I understand theory and I can speak very abstract on things, but if they don't make sense to me in reality and I don't know how to make it into something that I can actually use, then I don't always see the value in it, and I can be quite fast to dismiss as a result. So my opposite will be someone that is really idea-driven and can think very far out and open. And I love that when I meet people that are as creative, because I can take an idea of someone else and make it bigger. I can take an idea of someone else and break it and change it and make it practical. But I don't come up with all of those innovative ideas on my own. So I always love to be inspired by people that are really, really creative and very idea-driven. And I think probably I'm more structured and methodological in the way that I'm doing things. Like I have this very futuristic, strategic way of thinking, and maybe someone that is either completely disorganized or very, very detailed would also be kind of the opposite of me.
Awesome. Well, I
What's
enjoy
your
talking.
opposite?
The opposite of me. Well, I thought about it a lot, and one thing I do like to talk, and I talk a lot, but I'm not a talker. I'm someone who acts. I'm someone who produces, who creates, does things. So if you really want to torture me, you put me in a project where we do have lots and lots of meetings where we discuss what we could discuss, when we should discuss it the next time. Okay, we have a slideshow coming up, we have to wait for that. So maybe in 3 months we could decide on what we do and stuff like that. That's I hate that.
Oh, my.
Because I'm hands-on in a lot of ways, even though I love theory. So that's definitely one opposite of me. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, we need everything, right?
Of course.
So we need people that are very strategic and can have those type of very futuristic conversations, and we need the people that are having that itch, that we want to act on something. And I
have an idea, I want to do it. I want to try it.
So you're that. You're that person. That's great.
I enjoyed it a lot, Bar.
Same here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.